Good evening. Today we're going to do a little experiment. Basically, the long and short of it is we're going to have Omni Rabbit and myself, Just Vine, behave like a bot. We have come up with a set of instructions, 5 instructions of what to enter in battle. Obviously this won't be perfect because it's not automated, but we wanted to, for one thing, see how it flows for people to do bots manually for a few reasons. And we also just wanted to explain some difficulties with making a bot for Ed. So I'll give those in a little bit. Omni Rabbit and Amara will be fighting shortly. So if you are interested in fighting us, we have plenty of slots open here. We're more than happy to invite you.
Let's do this.
But for now, let's start with the very, very basics of this. So the first command is heavy punch, hold, hidden, V skill, tap, triple punch, heavy punch. So what this is basically doing is it's hiding your V skill and psycho uppers in your psycho knuckle. Psycho Knuckle is a good move for hiding in lots of different stuff, especially because on hit he can do a few different things, and if he is blocked,
Round 1.
his pressure is safe, but you can jab him out of it. So his Psycho Upper is the way he gets out of those types of situations. The second input is V skill, hold, and then hide inside that light punch, or light kick. And in the recording as Ed pulls his opponent. So basically the V skill is Ed's main way of closing space safely. As safe as that can be, anyway. Psycho Knuckle is his other one. So these are the two main things you need in a bot, both to give it mobility, even though the mobility isn't real. It's just changing the spacing. And it makes it so that you have to think about your footsies a bit. Because while Ed himself is not a footsies character, Ed evades your footsies with all of his different ways of manipulating his situation. So you, the not Ed, need to get used to the ways he evades. And that's with heavy punch and his V skill and his dashes, etc. So his third action is dash, forward throw, and then hide in the throw, hit a Psycho Rising, and hold 9, which is your forward jump, until the throw ends and end the recording. A lot of Ed's main way to mix you up is through throwing and through his throw loops. So you have to have something in there to do that, But the other way that Ed gets in on you is by jumping and jumping in. And even empty jumping, especially against Ryu, as you can see with Amara, who is a great fan of parry, can easily parry some of Ed's stuff. So an empty jump is necessary to mimic Ed responding to that type of mechanic, because a lot of characters have a way to cancel out what Ed is doing without necessarily canceling out his move coming out. So the fourth action is just a backdash, hold down back, do down back, medium punch, and then 6 medium punch. 6 medium punch is the start of his psycho shot. So when you combine that with a lot of the hidden punches in here, it allows him to mimic fireball pressure if you had knocked him down at some point, or if he's jumped for too long, etc. So even a slight interruption will cause him to try to counter zone you or zone you. This is important because his fireball is the way Ed wastes time but forces you to have to do something. And obviously blocking a bit and using medium punch, which is his combo, his main combo starter, and is plus on block, so it's one of his few block string stuff. You need something like that in order to learn Ed. So the final action is light punch, medium kick, forward dash, and end the recording just before the dash ends.
Round 1. Fight.
And this is mainly a pressure string on his part. As you can see, there's not many hidden things in these recordings. And the reason that is because of the way his control scheme is. Part of what we rely on when building a bot is using the way quick rises work to our advantage, and honestly overlapping a lot of different things to happen in priority of each other. This isn't as easy to do when a lot of your special moves require 2 or more of those buttons. In fact, that's part of the problem with hiding these skills inside of a move. Usually you make the V skill what you hide things in, which we did here. V triggers are fine, but V triggers are a temporary thing usually. And when they aren't, as you could see in Zangief Bot earlier in the week when we were showing off the prototype for that, it took up the entire thing because you have to hold heavy punch and heavy kick in order for the red tornado to go off in full. You can't really hide anything heavy while you're doing that because you're holding the button. And that's the main difficulty with Edbot. Edbot requires you to hold a lot of different buttons at particular times in order to get something going. And Ed requires a lot of technical stuff that doesn't work if it's not in a specific order. Part of what we were discussing earlier this morning was that Ed is very predictable. Ed only has one real game plan. He sets you up for throw loops, gets you comfortable with throw loops, tries to get you to mash a jab somewhere along the line so he can crush counter it or counter hit it. and he occasionally uses his V skill or his Psycho Knuckle to cross you up or pull you out of your uncomfortable space. Unfortunately for Ed, a lot of his comfortable spaces are comfortable spaces for a lot of the cast. This doesn't make him low tier, but it definitely makes him harder to make a bot out of, because the way bots are built is they're built to make something uniquely unfair in the way that an online person would try to abuse. But the way Ed is designed, he's so honest, even though he has all these different tools, that there isn't a style of Ed per se that will be online. You play Ed the way you would play your main character that you came from, basically, with the extra tools that he has. So I am going to do my part here and play the bot a bit. No promises this will work out alright, but we'll see. So if any of you are interested in fighting Ed or Edbot, just let us know. So, in case you have just joined us, what we're doing right now is basically playing an Ed bot. We're playing pre-recorded actions that we have thought of ahead of time and mixing them up at random, so that way our opponent can practice specific things. So as you can see, if Ed gets reset, if Ed gets shifted to his other commands, he starts losing his ability to pressure, but an actual Ed probably wouldn't have that problem. So another interesting problem with Ed is that if I'm holding Psycho Knuckle and I want to hide like a Psycho Upper, for example, well, his heavy button's already taken and the hold while holding the command. So that leaves you with your light punch and your medium punch. Now wait, if you press one of those buttons, then you're not gonna get Psycho Upper. You're gonna get Psycho Upper, you're not gonna get Psycho Knuckle. So that's the main reason why he's so hard to build a bot for. You could probably hide Psycho Rising in those instances, but where Ed uses his Psycho Rising is basically inside combos. So, a real Ed would never do those things, even at the bronze level. There's some uses for doing raw Psycho Rising, but they're mainly anti-air situations. So there is another difficulty with this character. And it's not just his button. It's not just the fact that he has to hold certain buttons in order to do things, although that is a big issue. The other issue is that some of them require a precise directional input at the same time. So not only are you limited in what direction you can be at, but you're also having the limited button problem we discussed earlier. And this combines into a very interesting mix of usable in terms of making a bot, but is it going to teach you anything? Is it going to teach you anything beyond just playing recordings of Psycho Knuckle continuously, for instance? Is it going to teach you more than the AI built into the game already? We don't know what the AI looks like in training mode, but we can probably take a few guesses. If they have built his AI with the same way they've built everything else in terms of CPUs, he'll probably be a lot like Vega. And for Vega, we specifically don't feel we need a bot right now because Vega basically does what a bot would do. You can play against Vega CPU level 8 and get a good idea of what someone in bronze as Vega will try to do. This isn't true of a lot of their other CPUs, which is why we had to build these in the first place. But Ed's moves can only be used in certain situations, and also Ed's moves are very straightforward. His game plan is very straightforward. So the bot itself wouldn't be that hard to program on Capcom's side. So let's analyze some stuff here that Ed can do. If the Psycho Burst input is put in and then it goes into the Psycho Knuckle input, it will perform Psycho Shot at the heavy button level. For example.
Round 4. Fight.
But if he does Psycho Knuckle twice, he'll get the standard punish for a landed Psycho Knuckle. But you can just jab him out of that. If it's blocked, that is. But Psycho Knuckle is basically safe on block. It's just not safe enough to do a heavy button. You can probably jab as Ed after a Psycho Knuckle. It will probably trade if they choose to jab. You cannot tick throw, but you can normal throw. You can jump
Round 1.
in anticipation of the opponent trying to tech your throw and punish them from there. Ed has some pretty decent neutral jump options for punishing a throw. His air heavy kick and his air heavy punch both have nice downward hitboxes. So it very much is in Ed's game plan to play this sort of rock, paper, scissors game. After his Psycho Knuckle. And that's the last thing you can do after a successful blocked Psycho Knuckle, is a EX Psycho upper for the invincibility frames, so that way whatever the opponent throws at you, it's safe and they're punished. And that's actually the main use for a lot of Ed's meter. Ed will use that meter to either improve his damage or make his Psycho Knuckle safe. I have not seen a real use outside combos for Ed's EX Psycho Shot, for example. It goes too fast in some ways to be useful as a counter fireball tool, because it will hit the opponent before they can even think about, oh, should I throw out a fireball now? It makes it a reactable thing, sort of, but Ed's fireball is fairly long as far as fireballs go, in terms of when the active frames get out, and that's the important part.
Round 3. Fight.
But generally, if there was ever such a thing as the quintessential Ed style, it would revolve around a similar way Infiltration actually plays, in that there's lots of dash back and dash forward because his dashes are so good, while threatening the opponent with throws or special moves. What made Season 1 Nash so effective was he had longer limbed attacks to back this up, to create a sort of nutty, evasive pressure. But Ed doesn't have that type of reach, so he has to rely on his very few special moves that have a long hitbox. In fact, none of them do. His only long hitboxed special move is Psycho Rising and Psycho Knuckle, if you can even call that a special move. So Ed needs to play a little differently in that he needs to rely on the mind game aspect a lot more strongly in this game, which is what this game is really about. This game is about mind games and spacing. And Ed is very well built for those things, but you have to be really good at them in order to be effective as Ed. If you're not good at those things, it'll be very obvious.
Don't worry. I'll end you quickly.
Well, ain't you a high-def picture of strength? I'm shaking here.
Round 1. Fight! Round 2. Fight!
Damn you! How irritating.
Round 3. Fight!
Damn you! How irritating.
Round 4. Fight!
So as you can see, you need to get really good at predicting your opponent on Ed. Because, for example, if Urian does his headbutt, his V-skill doesn't work. It needs to be this version. It needs to be the airborne version. So,
Final
Ed
round.
has an interesting similarity with Colleen. Randomness is very strong against Colleen because a lot of her stuff is centered around the fact that she can parry or slide. And therefore, technically you're rewarded for being as mixy as possible. Because of her parry system, she becomes predictable.
You win.
Ed, on the other hand, becomes predictable because of the fact that his V skill is built such that it can basically change any footsie situation. They had to balance that out somehow.
Round 1. Fight.
And the way they balanced that was by making it long and they gave it a very specific hitbox. But in exchange, Ed gets really good anti-air capacity with that if you can use it correctly. And he can ignore footsies. But if Ed can ignore footsies, then that means he's ignoring a part of the game that creates predictability. Footsies is about making a move such that it spaces you so that way you know what your opponent's gonna do next. So it creates unpredictability on your opponent's side because it's no longer smart for your opponent to play footsies. It's smart for your opponent to jump a lot, to use moves that are unoptimal and but can punish you out of your Psycho Knuckle or your V skill. So if he is rewarded for that, if he's rewarded for evading the part of the game that makes matches predictable, if an opponent gets caught up in footsies and trying to get him to play footsies, they're gonna have a bad day. So Colleen is very similar. If you try to play Colleen with footsies, you try to use block strings, you try to throw out moves to make sure she stays spaced out a certain way, she's just going to parry you, and you're going to take lots of damage for it. So, like Ed,
Well, ain't you a high-def picture of strength? I'm shaking
and like Colleen, the bots for those characters
Round one.
have to be played against in a way that makes them random. So how do you create a scoring system for a random player? What could we make Edbot's scoring system be? We could reward you for punishing his Psycho Punch, or Psycho Knuckle. We could reward you for essentially using his parrying his B skill. We could give you points for throwing him. That'd be great. There's no real reason to give you points for anti-airing Ed, although you could probably make a bot for practicing that, because he does have a lot of decent decent air moves. But there's lots of better bots to teach you air-to-air stuff. And as you can see, it's very easy for Ed to just not throw tech that. So Ed has to be very aware. There we go. That's... if I made a rule for each separate character, I would probably have Ryu practice parrying every single Psycho Knuckle. Because that's the most effective way to shut Ed down for Ryu. It's his only get-in tool against Ryu, because Ryu has decent anti-airs. And Ryu's buttons are longer than most people in the game, so he can punish a lot more things despite Ed's really, really massive pushback on his hits on block.
Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Round three. Fight.
And really, there's not much else to say on this topic. Ed is a very straightforward character, so his design philosophy is also fairly simple.
You lose.
I suppose there is one last thing I could talk about, though. And that is what tools Ed has. Ed has a B skill that can pull you in or pull in your opponent, and on block can do damage in certain situations. So that's an interesting mechanic. It's interesting in that a lot of this game revolves around keeping at a certain distance.
Round 1.
But you can only use his V skill at a certain distance, but it violates the rules a little bit. It also gives him the ability to almost have a command grab. It's not quite a command grab in terms of mechanics, but it definitely expands the reach of his grab in a very almost unnatural for this game sort of manner. But in some other ways, it's incredibly natural to just give a person without any command grab whatsoever the ability to make a situation where he can keep throwing. And as we know, on Ed's forward throw, you get a throw loop. So clearly in his design, they have given you a tool that lets you set up throw loops a lot. Now, this is why we keep on repeating that Ed is probably going to make some people very mad. His execution is easy, but he rewards the mechanic in the game that probably annoys people the most because it's so overused to them.
Round 3.
And it forces the game into all about the conditioning that you have done over the match, and therefore how the conditioning affects their play. Armika, Laura, Zangief, these are all people who function in a similar way. Their job is to get you to feel a certain way about one of their moves and get you to avoid it or try to bait it out. But it revolves around making you feel a certain way about them and what they're going to do next. So Ed takes that to a whole other level, and basically all of his buttons really are built around making you think about
Round 1.
a conditioning point. And if an Ed is played badly, he would not have conditioned you well enough to get any damage done. That's why they make him a low damage character. His inputs are easy, but his game plan revolves around making things into a guessing game. But this kind of guessing game isn't really guessing, because you would have had done your throw loop for like 4 times in the match, and now Ryu, for example, here is ready for the throw. And therefore, Ed's life is at like 10%.
Round 2. Fight.
So if Ed plays his cards right, while he doesn't do too much damage, as long as he gets you in the situations where he has made you afraid of something or over-focused on something, he's going to win. And he can do that probably at a similar level to a command grab character, except for the fact that he's missing his command grab. He has that fake V skill into throw command grab, which makes him weaker at the throw game itself, but he has another tool, which is his Psycho Knuckle. His Psycho Knuckle creates a similar situation, but unlike Mika, for example, it's based around crossing you up, making you mess up your execution a little, making you have to focus on blocking from the opposite direction. There's all sorts of things that his Psycho Knuckle forces you to think about. But if you're thinking about that, and then you have to also think about his dash throw, well, as Armika clearly shows, it can get very difficult to deal with when you're dealing with a drop kick that is safe on block and a dash and command throw. It's a very similar situation, but with a different emphasis. And unlike Mika and Zangief, Ed has more ways to get up close to an opponent. He has his V skill, his Psycho Knuckle, and honestly just his dash in general is very good at closing space. Mika's dash and Zangief's dash are very slow in comparison.
Round 2. Fight.
Oh man, down to the wire.
Round 3. Fight!
Oh man, down to the wire.
Round 4. Fight! You win!
I really like his V-skill though, design-wise, because situations like that can't happen on any other character. They somehow managed to make this completely unique interaction.
Fight!
Like, there's no chip damage kills in this game other than super. So what did they do? They made a character who, on block, does enough chip damage that isn't actually chip damage to kill you. So they violate their own rules a little bit.
Round 2. Fight!
That was interesting. So apparently his medium kick can hit you on the way up from a back jump?
Fight!
Duly noted. So they encourage you to jump against him a lot more
How irritating.
than a lot of other characters. And honestly, for Colleen, you're rewarded in the same way for jumping. Because jumping creates a mix-up space. Just wanted to demonstrate that he can indeed hurt himself against Aegis Reflector with his B skill.
Win.
I think I'm too good of an Edbot. Well, I hope so, given I'm going to be playing him for a long time this weekend.